Welcome to the Adrian podcast, episode 153, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Amit Nayak. Amit, how are you?
Very good, Adrian. Thank you for your lovely introduction, the opportunity there as well.
No problem. So Amit is a very experienced agent. He currently is working with McGrath estate agents in Parramatta. He's a partner of the business who currently have 5 offices which they're running. And Amit is focusing more on that sort of North Parramatta and surrounds. And the interesting story with Amit is he's been in the industry for less than 10 years and doing over 200 transactions. Now, what we want to try and take a deep dive on, Amit, is how we got to that point. And really the whole purpose of the podcast is to add value to our listeners. And there's a lot of curiosity around what the journey looks like, okay? So less than 10 years in the industry, so how many years altogether now?
7 years, Adrian.
7. Okay, terrific. Now, I know you migrated as well to Australia.
Yes.
We're having a brief chat on the way here in terms of the family dynamic. And when you first got to Australia, was it even in the thought process to get in real estate at all?
Not at all. So just happened to be in the industry just by accident, I would say, but certainly was not the plan whatsoever. So yeah, I'll just sort of go through in a bit more in detail as well. So I came to the country in 2007, worked as a chef, started as a kitchen hand though, worked my way up as a chef. And then back in 2012, I was working as a concierge or a security guard just in a residential apartment. That's where I used to meet with a lot of real estate agents when they were doing open homes on Saturdays, and that's when I thought, okay, I want to do that. I want to dress nice, want to drive nice car, and become a real estate agent. So that's when it started. Yeah.
There you go. And was it purely just being exposed to some of those agents through being a concierge service, and at the same time you're working as a chef, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't really by design. It was more like, I'd love to just look better, dress better, and you didn't really have a roadmap in terms of what it would look like, yeah?
That's exactly right. I didn't really have the roadmap. I was sort of working at that time, just doing the night shifts, doing a couple of jobs, still part-time as a chef, and was actually looking for a career as well, and luckily I got into this beautiful industry, and I don't think I would ever look back.
Interesting. And obviously when you migrated from India, what was the thought process back there? Like, obviously going through school and any studies, was there some sort of vision or ambition to do any type of industry at all?
Not at all. Right. I was studying Bachelor in Commerce back home.
Yep.
I didn't finish my uni, I was dropped out, and I came when I was 18.
Right.
So I thought when I come to Australia I would study the same, but couldn't afford to study that. So hospitality was the cheapest industry in terms of the fees, and easiest to get the permanent residency.
Yep.
That was the only reason I ended up doing that. But at some point I thought, okay, what do I do and make my career in, which was the first thing came to my mind was accounting.
Yes.
Or Bachelor in Commerce.
Right.
But luckily I started in real estate because I know in terms of the accounting business, I don't think it would have got the opportunities what our industry offers.
Yep. So there seems to be a huge migration from India to Australia.
Yes.
But then for every person that migrates, there must be a lot of people who also stay and make a home and make a life for themselves back in India. So what's the lifestyle there like for people that don't know?
I mean, look, it's yes, you do like still long hours of work. There is a lot of competition because of the population there, and if you were to be either an accountant or an engineer, because if one job application opens, there would be hundreds of them would be applying for it.
Right.
So it's very competitive, unlike here. But I think in terms of the quality of life plus the opportunities what this country would offer, obviously it's unlike, there's nothing like this back home.
Yes. And the culture in India is a very very much one from the parents' point of view of academia, right?
Yes.
So it's something that is highly encouraged. It would almost be unusual if you're assuming you're middle class or above, not to do some sort of post-school education, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. What do you think that the reason is for that? Is it ambition? Is it part of just their culture? Is it a habit? What do you think that comes down to?
I think it's culture and habit,
Right.
a bit of both, I would say. But I think, look, for my parents, if I were to look at it, we were more sort of a, lower middle class family, where dad was running a business and just hardly sort of making a living. And as I said earlier, so my brother sort of came a couple of years before me. So dad took a massive debt. And then when I was coming, I was like, how dad would be able to afford to pay all my school fees and stuff. So again, he took another debt through a family member. So I think, yes, there is a lot of struggle, but it just simply comes down to, a lot of people do want to move out, and the purely biggest reason would be the competition or the quality of life for the long term.
Yep. Because you're talking about people there with like double, triple degrees.
Yes.
So you're going for a job. It's just the population alone
Yes.
just makes the pool of available employees just so much higher, right?
Yes.
And so yourself and your brother have left your sister and your mum and dad back home.
Yes.
That must be tough.
It is tough, but since 2011, my parents are sort of visiting us pretty much every year. I would say they're here. My sister's been visiting every, for the past 6-7 years as well. Every year she would trying to see us. It is tough, but hey, look, we actually now used to it. They're used to it, but at least as coming back to this industry and so thankful that we can still afford to, fly back every year, or they will be able to still fly back, and we can even sponsor them if need be as well. So now it's easier, but obviously back in 2007 till first 7-8 years was very difficult.
I can imagine. You've been fortunate enough to build a great life for yourself and your family, which we'll talk about. But as that young Indian boy growing up, does it seem really foreign for what you're doing now in terms of, because I've seen you, I've called a couple of auctions for you, and I
Yes. coach
you and your team. You're a bit of a rock star in your area. You've got this group of followers and, almost like a Bollywood style, So does it seem really foreign based on, what you've been grateful for and what you've been gifted with today, even though it's taken hard work, compared to that little boy growing up in what you're saying now is a low to middle class family?
Yes. I mean, look, I don't take things as granted being in the industry. And at the end, the only way what I'm doing today, it's purely because of that community out there.
Yeah.
So yes, it just makes us feel great when you walk out on the street, you go out in a restaurant or local shops or supermarkets, or even at an auction where the locals calling you by name and the kids knowing you as well. And obviously it makes you feel proud, but I never think that, hey, look, I'm just sitting sort of above anybody out there in the community. And I think that's one thing, being humble, that the community always love about as well. And I believe that's how they know you. You're easy to reach to, rather than someone thinking, hey, look, this guy is just never say hello, or don't even look at us, or don't pay any attention.
Yep.
I would never ever want to be that.
Yep.
But it's very humbling thing where you go out at auctions or open homes and people know you and they want to talk to you. And having that bit of an attraction business, that's something that we call in the industry. But I think I don't feel like being a Bollywood star or anything, but I think it's just been a humbling experience, I would say.
Amazing. And as a takeaway for agents listening, obviously you've immersed yourself in your community and your geography, because you live in your core market.
Yes.
Your community lives in your core market as well. So would that be a tip to agents if they're choosing a market to get into, either earlier in their career or if they're actually pivoting potentially and having decided on a different market? Do you think having roots either geographically or culturally is important?
it certainly is very important. And then main reason for people to buy within my core markets community is the biggest reason as well, as they might have rented in the area, being temple sort of, having in that local market, and then being, wanting to stay closer to the friends or family members. So yes, it certainly is that community what we mainly see within that Westmead, Wentworth, Pill, Parramatta region, and also in terms of what the suburb has to offer as well. I think they all want to stay within that little community out there.
And the importance of academia must have crossed over from India to Australia, because it's not a coincidence around there you got some of the best schools in the country.
Yes.
So is that still a high priority for your community?
That's for sure. So when I look at two suburbs, for an example, within my core markets like Westmead, where Westmead has a pretty good public school there, which has ratings of 97, 98%. Then I'll look at Girraween, which is within the same postcode of 2145, has a very good ratings there as well. So yes, in terms of the school, in terms of what those schools offers, either it's a high school, Parramatta High School, then Girraween, high school there as well, which is half selective. So that certainly is a big reason. And I would say 98% of the children, the students there are from Indian, Sri Lankan background mainly.
Interesting. Yeah. So then we go high level, Amit, and we think, how the hell does an agent go to 200 plus sales under 10 years, like 7, 8 years? How did the journey first start? We know how you got into it, but you had everything against you, like language barrier, the skill set, almost cliche in the sense that when you first move here, you're working at a gas station, so almost cliche sort of in your community. The first year in real estate must have been pretty challenging, right?
It was, particularly the first 6 months, I would say, because no one knows you in the area. The area was completely like new for me, had no sales experience as well. So yes, it was challenging, but the things that I think this particular time, what we can do just by jumping on, YouTube, watching a lot of videos, you have plenty of contents on, just Googling your name or going on YouTube. We look at quite many others, real estate coaches and all as well, just like yourself. There's so much content out there that we could just watch and learn, which is exactly what I did from right from the beginning. So first 6 months time frame, Adrian, was very difficult, but I was quite lucky. My family was backing me up. So my brother, I sat down with him and told him that, hey, look, I may not be making any money or bringing any money to the family. So in terms of paying all the expenses for the first few months, if you could cover. But I did tell myself, did tell my family that, hey, look, there is no plan B. So I'm getting all in without just having to look back. And yes, it was challenging, but I think it does get easier if we just simply stick to the process. And our business is certainly that community-based, people-based business where you just go out and start meeting with people, either it's at the open home, door knocking, cold calling, whatever it is, and just keep doing that, sitting down with agents like yourself in the industry. And the main thing what I have noticed is great agents in our industry are very generous in terms of giving their time. So I did exactly do that and learned a lot and just stick to those processes right from the beginning. It's
so true, because you look at, say, ARIC conference, which you've been fortunate enough to be asked to speak at this year, which is exciting for you. And you look at other industries and you think to yourself, there's no real conferences or forum for, say, medicine, law or accounting where people share their IP. Where real estate, it's free and everyone seems to do it. And yet there's still only 80% of the industry who are still earning wages at best, and 20% of the industry are earning 80% of the income. So it's a very fractured industry in that sense. And obviously you started in that 80% club, and now you've worked your way up to be in that sort of top 20%. In terms of volume, in fact, in the country, you'd be probably in the top 5%. So up to the first couple of years, obviously you would have had to do a number of sales and learn a number of skills. At what point did you put on your first team member?
So that was in my very fourth year,
Yep.
where Ritesh, who's my elder brother, so he started in our team. That year I sold 95 homes without having anyone in my team. Not having proud saying that, because that was a big mistake. I should have certainly done that in my second year when we sold just over 40 homes. I should have just put somebody on at that time. But yeah, that's my fourth year when I put the first person in.
So 95 was with or without Ritesh?
Without Ritesh.
Without Ritesh, yeah. So I assume, and I know we've spoken about this, I assume the reason that you're suggesting that was a mistake was three key areas could have been cannibalised. One is the customer service experience.
Yes.
Two is the leakage in your business, right? And three is personal burnout.
100%.
Yeah, because all of us are only equipped with 168 hours in a week, every single human, and you got to sleep, you got to eat, you got to spend time with family or whatever. So, you know, I think you're very fortunate enough to still be here to do 95 sales and, you know, on your own. Because I know what's involved in each one of those transactions. So I think a key takeaway for anyone listening is hire, you know, well above or well in front of the curve.
Yes.
Because look, my theory is I think 35 to 40 is the right number of transactions to do on your own.
Completely agree.
And at that point, you develop an appetite for scaling. And all scaling is delegating anything that's non-dollar productive, so you can focus on more listing, more prospecting, more negotiating, more keeping deals together.
Yes.
And it's sobering that you've had to learn it the hard way. But since then, obviously, you've scaled even further. So not only Ritesh is part of your team, but you've got two other team members. And I assume that happened a lot quicker than putting on your first team member,
yes,
right?
That's exactly right.
So how did we go from 95 to over 200 sales? What were the key takeaways? Obviously, you know, in that we've got Danny, who's an associate agent / buyer's agent. You've got Ritesh, who's still a listing and selling agent within your own team.
Yes.
And then you've got Taser, who's an office manager or EA, if you like. But apart from resources, which they are great resources, what were the other things you needed to do, and who did you need to become to actually bridge that gap?
Yes, I think first of all, I would say I had to really believe in myself that yes, I can lead a team of multiple people. Second is yes, I can sell 150, which was my goal after 95. We can sell more homes, and I really had to become that person, you know, and have that belief in me and the team that yes, we would be able to do it. There were many things, and that's a mistake within our industry, including myself, I had at that time, where we think that, hey, look, this job, the other person won't be able to do it. It's just me who's going to be able to do it. Nobody else can do that. And I think just letting things go and trusting others to be able to do that and making them CEO of that you know, particular department. So that's first thing I had to do. And then other thing that I did was, you know, who's my business partner, Connor, sat down with him, and he believed in me a lot. And one suggestion which came from him was, you know, write down things where you really think that you are great at and you would love to do, and you could, by doing that, you could do more volume, and write down things on the other side that you don't wanting to do, and you could actually delegate to somebody else to do that. So that's exactly what I did. And then a lot of things were mainly the checking emails, replying a lot of emails, sending the proposals, sending the pre-listing kits, and all those you know things, where then I had to really look back and say, okay, you know, first person I really now need to put on was someone who could do all the admin work. And that's when we did put Taser on, and she's incredibly good and in terms of what she does. And then, you know, Danny was the person that we put straight after. And then, because if I look back, when I started in the industry, Adrian, what things that I focused on to be able to accelerate my business or get some traction in my business, which was incredible buyer work. And hence why I have got a buyer's agent in my team at the moment, because I know that how critical that buyer work is, because today's buyer, you know, will be our sellers. And one metaphor which I strongly believe is, yes, we got to be their agent before they would even need an agent. So I literally signed up a listing yesterday, which I was telling you while we were coming here. Now, this particular family, I met with them back in 2015, very first month when I started in real estate. They were just, you know, they attended an auction. I took their details then and kept in touch with them. They ended up buying in a different core market, but then we helped them to lease their property in the previous office that I was working on. But now they were ready to sell, and the only agent come to their mind was us. And yes, it's just like putting the money into your account 7-8 years down the track, but I was already their agent that 7 years ago. So I think following that and doing that, I think, and this is exactly what I've been telling our team, where I could see Danny and Ritesh going to be an absolute incredible listing agents. They certainly are amazing buyers agent for now within our team. And now we're changing a bit of a structure with your help as well, where we could perhaps even sell 225, 250 homes next year, which is our goal.
Yeah. So what we're hearing there is you know, frequency builds trust.
Yes.
You know, so you meet a buyer, you know, 7 years ago who becomes a seller today, but that doesn't happen just by first impressions. It doesn't happen even by providing good service. You've got to do all of that and then harness the relationship and 100%. Nurture a relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. So you think about doing that on scale with hundreds, if not thousands of people. That's how you go from 200 to 300 sales. And that list that you wrote down, you know, which was, what are the things that I'd like to be focusing on? What are the things that well, you mentioned some things that, you know, are worth delegating, such as pre-listing kits, etc. What were the main key things that you thought to yourself, I feel on purpose if I am conducting these following activities? What were those things you wrote down?
The main thing was, like, you know, sending thank you emails.
Yeah.
You know, sending thank you text messages, which I still do it, but thank you emails, then sending the proposals, which is one thing I didn't sort of like doing it, or I still don't prefer to do it, because how many times you would go and pitch for a business and then they would say, send me a proposal, and then they would just compare and they would just then say, oh yeah, you're expensive and I'm going with another agent. So we sort of stopped doing that. Emails, there was one thing, it was taking a lot of time, particularly when I started doing more volumes, where I had to just reply to each and every one of them. So we changed the system. We changed the processes in terms of sending those thank you emails. To give an example, these days, if I were to have an appointment at 2 o'clock this afternoon, Taser from our team, she would already have the thank you email sent with our pre-listing kit. She would have the post-appointment email already drafted in my inbox, where I have to just get out of the meeting. I send them a thank you text message, and then straight after that, send that email. So before, I was just going back in the office, stopping that email, so that's been gone. Right. The other thing was a lot of building pest inspection, the bank valuation access and all that. So that one I don't need to worry anymore as well. So all that process is mainly streamlined. And now the other thing was a lot of bar work as well, because doing that volume from that sort of a first year, selling 26 to then 50 odd homes to 95 homes. We're getting a lot of phone calls, and in my market, we've been dealing with a lot of first-home buyers who really want you to hold their hands and take them through the entire journey of how that buying process looks like. Many of them do not even have the finance ready. So having a broker within a team who actually attend our open home, and then which Ritesh or Danny these days would do that. So I was spending a lot more time there, where I literally had to take that away from myself, and what focus now is just list, sell, negotiate, and then database nurturing with my VIP clients or the existing client.
So when you unpack everything, this is the formula for success for any agent, Amit, whether they have a team or they don't. If they have any degree of support, the key is exactly what you said. You just got to focus on prospecting, listing, negotiating, selling, and database management, which is what you're doing. But even if you don't have a team, what you could do is carve out times in your day, maybe an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, where you could do non-dollar productive activities, and therefore stay highly focused on dollar productivity in chunks, so therefore you maintain some degree of momentum, right?
Yes.
Because we're not always going to have the luxury of a team member, even though once we reach a certain degree of sales, whether it's 30 or 40, we should be starting to think about it, well ahead of the curve.
Yes.
So interesting point there in terms of what you had to let go of to grow. So they often say you got to let go to grow.
Yes.
But what you were saying is sometimes there can be some hesitation or reluctancy because there's a degree of control where it's hard, right? Because they're going to make mistakes, but you're going to make mistakes as well, and they need to own that. And to quote you, you're saying they've got to be the CEO of their swim lane, and the only way they're going to do that is to learn, make mistakes, trial and error. So, what sort of autonomy do you give your team members? Do they have full autonomy for that particular role?
I think obviously they have their list, already with them in terms of what work they are doing, and also just that having a WIP meeting, just work in progress meetings every day, that also helps as well. That how the entire week's going to look like. So on Monday, as that was one thing that we changed after training, after the trainings with you, that we sit down on Mondays and we look at how the entire week look like and how our day look like. So just sketching up 10-15 minutes. But each and every team member, certainly they do have their roles and responsibilities. So we all, stick to each other's sort of swim lane rather than me doing, a few other work sort of, with the buyer, or even doing some admin work, or anybody else jumping in and asking those questions, because it did happen at the beginning. But yes, we had to then just have their roles and responsibilities, and now it just, the process is extremely streamlined.
So we talk about database nurturing, which you're now doing every day, and that's something in our coaching together we've looked at in terms of making sure that we're calling past clients, past appraisals, pipeline sellers, and you allocate time to that per day. What does that look like in terms of how many hours or how long per day, and what's the general dialogue and workflow process in terms of what CRM you're using, how we're keeping in touch with them, and then creating the next follow-up?
Yes, so that certainly is game changing, because many of them, I just look at the data and realize that, oh yes, I haven't spoken to this person, it's been over 6, 12, 18 months or some even longer. So in terms of time, we allocate between 11 and 12. So we started with one call session straight after the training with you. Now we've changed to have even one more call session if we can. Not doing it every day, but at least when we having a lot of appointments, we then try and skip that, but still to have that 11:45 every morning. And the goal is to have good quality conversation with our past clients, just for that 45 minutes. So at least anywhere between 10 to 15 clients a day, calls, and then around 6 to 8 connects a day. And then in terms of CRM system, so we use Agent Box. And now the easiest part, which again with your help, what we started doing is, if I were to speak to Mr. Smith today, what we do is we have the next task already in there after 90 days. So after 90 days, they're going to be hearing from us once again. So there is another touch point as well. So that actually happens 4 times a year now. Before I was just sending a quarterly market review, but they're never speaking with them. So now we have, simply sort of started doing that. And that's where I think, look, it's in terms of a dialogue there, it's quite simple and straightforward. That, hey Adrian, I just sent you that market review document, which is a quarterly that we've been sending you. Have you received it? Yes, Amit, I have received it. Now, is there anything that we could help you with your real estate journey? Are you looking at buying, selling, upsizing? No. Do you know anyone within the community who might need those services? And if the answer is no, then we're like, okay, I'll look forward to speaking within the next 6 months, or 3 months. That's simply the dialogue. But obviously in my market, a lot of sellers are first-time sellers, and at some point they certainly will be looking at upsizing. So the other thing is, even now with the rates, what's been happening out there, there are many buyers even still wanting to upsize, or the kids growing, or just going into high school, or no kids, and then having the first child and all that. So I think there certainly is a lot of movements in the area, particularly looking at the volume there.
So what we're hearing there, Amit, is mastery level in terms of database management and prospecting. And this is such a lifeblood and foundation for our industry, yet it seems to be one of the most confusing topics. And what we're hearing there is you need to have a CRM or some sort of repository of data. Number two is you need to have frequency of contact, whether it's 60, 90 days or whatever frequency based on the conversation and their propensity to sell. Number three is you need to be adding value in the conversations. You need to be letting them know about just listed. You need to be letting them know about just sold. You need to actually build a relationship rather than just hiding behind a market report or an SMS or an email. And you need to make it, what I call and what I've had a lot of time coaching you guys about is this task-orientated approach, because the alternative is a very arbitrary, opaque approach where you look at a list and think, who do I call today based on my gut feeling? That's not going to cut it if you want to do 200 plus deals a year. It's not going to cut it even if you want to do 60 deals a year. This task-orientated approach where you literally press a button on your CRM or you're handed a list every single day and you call through that list and then make brief notes and then schedule the next task. I mean, that's as simple as it needs to be. That's in terms of proactive prospecting. Then you've got campaign prospecting, which is obviously callbacks, email inquiry, phone inquiry. And then you've got even colder prospecting, which could be expired listings, door knocking, cold calling. So they're the three sort of buckets, if you like. But that one pillar of database management, that doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. So delighted to see your team embrace that. Then you look at the next pillar, which is the listing process, right? Yes. What would you say your listing style is, Amit? Is it an agenda-based listing style? Is it a relationship-based, question-based? How would you summarise it?
It's mainly agenda-based and question-based. So the day that I would, get a call in, or as soon as I receive the call, that roughly goes around 10 to 15 minutes, where I actually ask a lot of questions and make a lot of notes. And one thing I always love to get in terms of, based on that vendors, that potential sellers research, where they see the value. And a lot of my vendors, as you know, Adrian, in my marketplace, is because we sell a lot of apartments, and 60% of apartment sellers are selling a lot lesser than what they purchased for. And that's why I just want to make it very straightforward. If they're sitting 5, 10, 15% above the market value, 5% it's okay at the end because that can be managed. But if they were to be sitting 15, 20% above the market value, then I just, tell them very upfront approach straight on the phone that, hey, look, that value is not there, and how they arrive to that value. And then just, if they have the motivation, probably yes, I'll still go and see them, but many then I may not even just go see them. But then the listing appointment, before that I actually send them the agenda by email and ask them to look into that as well or read through that beforehand. And when I sit down with them, again, a lot of questions and then go through the agenda.
Perfect. What's an example of some of the items on the agenda there?
So the first thing I like to talk is the price as well, even though I already asked them on the phone. And then I take a couple of comparable sales with me, and then we go through those comparables, talk about where their property sits in terms of value, then the demographic of buyers, who's likely to buy that style of a home. Then we talk about the method as well, auction versus private treaty, about the marketing in terms of what's going to be helping them to maximize the sale price, the time, the fees, and that's pretty much what we discuss. And if they're willing to move forward then and there, then we just sort of close, the business and do the paperwork from that point on.
Fantastic. And what do you like in terms of highlighting your unique selling propositions? Is it something that you need to utilise at every listing appointment, whether your own personal propositions or your company's personal propositions? Is this something that you find that you're talking about in most, if not all, appraisals?
I would speak to a few of them, because a lot of them, they have actually seen the numbers, what we do on the internet. So yes, I still like to remind them in terms of the accessibility to the buyers, what we have as a team, as an office. The second thing what I like to talk about is the speed, and many of them that actually relate to the emails or phone calls that they made to us, and how quickly we sending them the pre-listing kit, sending them the text messages, confirming the appointment that day, and straight after the appointment, sending a text message thanking them, and then sending an email, and then sending a bar match email. So we talk about the speed as well. And look, I mean, a lot of the agents in our marketplace I would say that they're very laid back and very old school, that the inquiry comes and they would be like, yeah, okay, the buyer would call me if they're wanting to. So those are the main two things that I do discuss at that point of time.
Perfect.
And then obviously in terms of negotiations as well. So like yesterday I was with a client where he asked me a question that, okay, what you do if you have only one bidder at auction, and I actually role played with him then and there. So, so yeah, even doing that as well.
Perfect. There's nothing like, actually showing the client what you do rather than telling them what you do, and role play, I think, is a great example of that. So then we go into the next pillar, which is that vendor management. And, you're almost working in two opposite markets within your geography, Amit. As you said earlier, your strata market prices have gone backwards, but your housing market prices have extremely advanced in an upwards trajectory like you wouldn't believe, only because it's such an affordable marketplace, and the growth's been massive, right? So for those people that are complaining about vendor management, have a think about that. Not many markets you would be dealing with properties that have actually gone backwards in price, right? So that's challenging for strata, but then you've got that other market of housing. So what are your key tips to agents watching or listening to this in terms of best practice vendor management, based in terms of setting the expectations, frequency of communication, when to have the tough conversations, when not to? What would be your top tips?
Yeah, so I obviously frequency is the first one. So I do speak to them, obviously straight after the listing in terms of managing the expectation, how often they're going to be hearing from me, how often I would perhaps even go and see them as well. Every Tuesday, for an example, I have the vendor meetings via Zoom because of the volume I like to do via Zoom. So, and which is a must. I even tell the vendors that we got to catch up. If you were to get a call from me on Saturday night, that I have to come and see you, that must be very alarming. That the campaign's certainly well off track. If that's the case, I normally go and see them. But yeah, first thing would be the frequency. Second, in terms of a lot of data driven, that research in terms of first day, second day, how many views we had, how many inquiries we had, how the property is performing on the internet, and then obviously looking at the feedback from either private inspections or Saturday and weekday open homes. So yeah, it's much more sort of data driven and numbers driven based on the performance of that particular property. Then, having to tell them that being open and available throughout that campaign, that if we were to give you a notice of 24 hours and say, hey, look, I've got a buyer who's willing to come and have a look at the property, making yourself available as well throughout that campaign. Because generally we even schedule a lot of inspections where many sellers even do notice in the area, many buyers do even tell us as well, or ask a question that, hey, look, I see open homes like random day Monday for 15 minutes, on Friday for 15 minutes, 10 minutes. So what we do is every time we take a buyer through or book a private inspection, we put 15-20 minutes open home. So having to have that frequency, but speaking with them minimum 3 times a week, meeting with them face to face via Zoom or in person once a week, and then obviously getting the offers throughout the campaign, particularly the very first week, which is very critical week in our view. So getting the sort of offers on a continuous sort of basis, which actually is the only thing which actually educate them and get the vendors to meet the market if they are sitting well above the market. Yeah, it's interesting. So what we're listening here to, guys, is we're having a set to sell meeting, obviously between list to launch, and at that set to sell meeting, we're creating pragmatic benchmarking, if you like, in terms of number it opens, how many contracts, how many offers, etc. So that way, we can actually measure whether we're on or off track based on those objective metrics rather than subjective comments from buyers such as the bedroom's too small or something like that. So we're hearing that. We're hearing non-negotiable face-to-face weekly. And the reason that's important is because there's only so much you can achieve over the phone or even via vendor reports, which I assume is part of your strategy as well. But having that face-to-face, displaying that evidence of effort
before you provide that evidence of market, and in that order is really, really critical. And then obviously frequency, building that trust as well, and not being afraid of having the tougher conversations. And if there's some urgency required around it, well, Saturday night, great. Then we need to get in front of the client. And it's not even a tough conversation, it's an honest conversation.
Yes.
Every owner deserves to know exactly what's happening with their property.
100%.
And if it's off track, well, let's be that trusted advisor, whether it's a doctor, lawyer, accountant, who's indiscriminate about the news they provide. They just provide the news,
Yes.
right? And if it's good, bad, or indifferent, well, let's just discuss it. But like those industries, they've got a solution.
Yes.
So our scenario might be, look, we only had 3 groups instead of 12. However, I can see that we've had 1,000 web views, so that's quite a high dismissal rate. My recommendation in order to reduce that dismissal rate and get more people engaging, not just online but physically, is price presentation marketing, whatever that looks like, right? So that's brilliant. And then we go to the next pillar, which is buyer servicing. Now, obviously, your team's doing a lot more buyer servicing than you are, but you're still involved because you are talking to buyers at auction. You are talking to the key buyers on every campaign. What tips would you give to agents today in this market in terms of best practice buyer work?
I think this market's more critical in terms of when the time would come for a buyer to transact, when you do hear a lot of negative media. The only way the buyer would listen to you and make an offer where you actually look him in the eye and say, hey, look, Adrian, you've got to pay another $20,000 more. Mm-hmm. Many times what used to happen is when the market was really good and the market was putting the deal together, many agents were obviously not answering the buyer's questions or not even greeting them properly even at the open homes. And then be like, hey, look, just make an offer, or just neglecting the questions, versus now a lot of agents trying to become their best friends. This is where I see that biggest challenge comes. However, our team, the main, which always has been the goal, is yes, that frequency, even with a buyer. So just to even give an example, when the inquiry comes through, from the inquiry to the inspection and post-inspection, we have 5 to 6 touch points with that buyer. So what are those touch points are, is as soon as the inquiry comes through, within 10 minutes, it's been replied, which is an auto respond, right? So we set that up. So it's been responded. Second is a phone call. Third is a text message on Friday with the open home reminder with the times. And then when you see them face to face as well, they already feel that relationship is a bit warm already. And then obviously the text message on Saturday afternoon as well as the follow-up phone call on Saturday afternoon or Monday afternoon or Monday morning, right? So you already have spoken to that person 5 times, and then we do it every time they would make an inquiry. Also, then even reaching out to them if they were to need any finance help, if they have any conveyancers or not as well. So I think doing that, it certainly would be building that trust. And where my marketplace is mainly non-auction market, especially for the apartments, where we actually auction a lot and asking the buyer to buy that property unconditional, we really got to have that solid relationship, which is extremely important. Because if that buyer were to just buy that property, obviously we provide all the strata reports and would have the solicitor reviewing the contract and all that for them ready to go. So then that way they could just really purchase the property without any hassle. But that it comes down to again the relationship with those buyers. And many of them, we actually our goal is always, once a buyer comes through our funnel, we really want to make sure that they end up buying from us or from our agency. Why? Is because the number of inspections that we will be doing in the area, we actually make things easier for them and giving them the list that, hey, look, these are the similar properties that we have. And then they would just, that Saturday whole day, they would just follow us and inspect the properties with us.
Brilliant. So what we're hearing is you've got to do an audit on your business to discover whether you're easy and quick to do business with.
Yes.
So from your team as a buyer, it's already an intimidating process to engage with agents.
Yes.
It's already a difficult process to navigate through. Who do I speak to? What do I say? Where do I go in order to secure a piece of real estate? So all you're doing is over communicating, making it easy to do business with you, making it transparent and making it quick as well, which is brilliant. So the last pillar we look at, Amit, when we're analysing agents' businesses and their business plan in particular, is the leveraging part of our business, and also what investments involved in that. Because whether you're an agent or an associate or whatever, you're not an employee or you're not a principal. You're a business, and like all businesses, you got to market yourself, right?
Yes.
Now, there's a lot of free marketing in terms of just providing great service and turning up on time and greeting people, and that's free, and it's still considered marketing because a lot of our competition are not even doing that.
Yes.
But then there is a fiscal investment required. What are the sort of things you're investing in from a personal marketing perspective that you find is effective?
I think that marketing, Adrian, would have to be online and offline.
Yep.
So the online is, either having the banners on ARIA domain, either having the showcase on ARIA domain, as well as, the regular sort of videos, a monthly wrap video on which is nice, professionally done, and boosting within my marketplace, which I continuously doing for the past few months. Then providing everyone the information just by going live on Facebook on a weekly basis every Saturday afternoon. As soon as I finish my day with callbacks, with vendor conversations, I go live on Facebook and just summarize, what exactly happened that day. So the locals, either the buyer, seller, investor, they get some information about the market there. Doing that, plus also getting involved within the community, either it's with the temple, with the schools as well. So there are 3 schools within our core markets where we actually sponsor the schools. So any sale happen within that school catchment, we give some money towards that school. So, there was one school where they needed some sports equipments for the school, for the kids. So we were like, okay, we're happy to sponsor that from our end. So I think just doing all that, where the locals do look at you that you're not just the real estate agent, you're the human first, right? And then the real estate agent. So I think just doing that marketing, plus on top of it, having the DL cards, which is just listed, auction invite, just sold, doing 1,000 to 2,000 each property, plus sending a lot of text messages, inviting the entire community to our auctions. So that sort of marketing we mainly focus on, which is more sort of online, which is Facebook, REA domain, and offline, which is a lot of drops, the school involvement and everything.
Brilliant. A lot of authenticity there, a lot of leverage marketing and promotion, yes, but in a way where we're adding value to our community, yes, which is great. So as we wrap up, Amit, the best part about this is we've looked at database and prospecting, we've looked at the listing process, we've looked at vendor management, we've looked at buyer work, and we've looked at leveraging or campaign marketing or personal marketing, which is great. So the industry doesn't get any more complicated than that. So you've got to find what works for you in terms of those main areas. Now, your focus in those areas has evolved over time, right? It didn't look like this last year and it won't look like this in 2 years' time. So you've got to be very fluid in this industry. And you're a really good example of good guys coming first. Like a lot of people say, you got to be a bit ruthless in this industry to do well. I disagree. I think that if you're honest, transparent, and humble, which you're equipped with all those traits, then it's not a surprise that you're dominating your market. So congratulations to you. As we wrap up, I like to ask everyone, and I never prepare anyone for this in my interviews, but one question I'll ask you is, what's something that's happened in your career which at the time was a mistake, but in hindsight was a lesson?
I think just what we even discussed earlier, trusting someone that, hey, look, you got to have burnout if you really don't put a right person in place within your team at a right time. Because back in that 15 when I started getting a bit of a business in 16. That's when I had my first child, my daughter Eva was born that year, and was very challenging for that first 2 years where I thought that I could do everything and didn't put anybody on. So I think that is certainly, if any agent out there being in the business for the last 6-12 months and been selling around 15, 20, 25 properties or so, I think they got to make that investment by believing in themselves that, hey, look, that is going to be the best investment, and do that rather than thinking that, hey, look, you'll be okay in terms of doing all that by yourself.
Excellent, excellent. What's one of the better things that have happened in your career during your time in real estate?
The better thing was obviously making a move, which obviously was one of the challenging thing at that time when I looked at, and trusting that, hey, look, change is great, but obviously there was, much more thoughtful and believing in the person, believing in the team. Con was, as I mentioned earlier, was the reason for me to make a move, and obviously the beautiful brand backed by John McGrath, who also coached me for first 6 to 12 months when I joined. So I think making that move was the biggest thing, and then how many times the great things happen to your life and say, hey, look, that should have happened a few years before, and that was one of that moment when I look at it that, hey, look, I should have done that couple of years before doing that, but that was the best thing happened to my life.
Yeah, and that's a good metaphor for anyone listening, is that all brands are great and they all offer something. It's just that whatever works for you in your market, it might even be opening your own independent agency. I think one thing that's becoming more relevant in the current landscape of the industry is that you are your own business. And these brands, whether they're a large franchise group such as McGrath or Ray White or Earl J. Hooker, they provide a platform for you to build your brand. Yes. Or whether it's an independent or whatever it might be. So I think it's really interesting in terms of taking that leap of faith, and it's not for everyone. Some people are going to be very happy listing and selling, just being an agent, if you like, and their wealth creation plan might be just buying investment property, or it might be becoming a partner in a larger organisation, or it might be a certain brand in that market suits you. So I think the important thing is focus on building your own brand and use whatever platform you can that suits you in terms of the resources that they offer. Yeah.
Yes.
Last thing, Amit, is what's one of the best pieces of advice you got, during your career in real estate so far?
Yeah, for me was just become people's person.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, is super important within our industry, and be grounded, no matter how big you become, or how many properties you would sell, or how much commission you would write, or whatever it is. I think be grounded and be humble of what you do, and give your best crack at anything and everything that you do. And lastly, what I would say is, if someone like myself, coming to this beautiful country, not long time back, and then with a very limited English, having that language barrier, if I can do it, I strongly believe that anybody would be able to do it. And I think this is certainly a great industry, and as long as we get all 100% in, because a lot of agents just will be thinking, hey, look, I just want to do part-time, or want to learn just for the time being. If it works out well for me, I would do it, otherwise I'll just quit. So if you do it, be 100% in, and just give the absolute best crack at it.
Yeah, love it. And you said before, no plan B,
100%.
which is great. Last thing, you get to ask me a question, anything you like.
For you, Adrian, I always think you're kind of a person up 3 o'clock in the morning. So I wake up in the morning and look at, oh, that's Adrian there. Plus, then you sort of coach, you're running the coaching business. You're also in the, listing, selling business. How do you do all that?
The secret is no children and not much sleep required.
Damn, I got 2 kids.
2 of them, right? And you need more sleep than me.
Yeah. I think it just seems like you never sleep.
Yeah, look, some people are just conditioned not to require so much sleep, and I'm just blessed or cursed, I don't know which one it is yet, that I fall into that category. But look, I mean, for me, I love variety. It's actually a biological human need. Obviously, in developing countries, food, water, shelter is human needs. But, for us in developed countries, our biological human needs actually include variety, certainty, connection, love, growth, contribution, all these things. And I like to feel as if I've got an eclectic list of activities, on the plate for the day.
Yes.
Whether it's creating content, working with a client, doing an auction, whatever it might be. So I think it's being passionate and on purpose. So I think, like your listing presentation, it's comprehensive and it's compelling. I think for me, if I feel on purpose every day, if I'm passionate about what I do, then I've got a very low expectation in return. I like to adopt that altruistic approach that I'm contributing, I'm adding value. It could be polarising. There might be part of the community that it's not for them, and that's fine, but it doesn't change where my approach, which is I like to give a lot more than I receive. And some people take advantage of that, and other people are really grateful for it. But I don't deviate from what I do, and that not dissimilar to your journey, Amit. So look, I really appreciate everyone tuning in. I really appreciate your time, Amit. Episode 153 of the Adrian Bowe podcast. It's been a great conversation today, and as I said, good guys come first, and the humble hero here in Amit is doing some fantastic numbers, over 200 transactions a year, over $3 million in GCI, and on track, I think, to grow his business exponentially. So thanks, Amit.
Thank you, Adrian.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it. Thanks,
Pleasure.
everyone.